Well, hello everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to take a look at Adobe After Effects. We're going to learn a little bit about expressions, how to use expressions to create different animations and some of the fun things we can do with expressions in Adobe After Effects. I know they're kind of scary. They can be intimidating because you're writing code and not dragging stuff and drawing stuff. So that's what we're going to take a look at today. If you guys want to go ahead and raise your hand in the chat, give me a little wave, let me know where you're coming from in this great world, and then I'll give you guys some greetings, then we'll just jump right into this and get started and get going with some After Effects expression goodness. I see Oliver and Annika and RB and Susan and Sean. Good to see you guys all here. Let's go ahead and get started. I'll keep up with the chat as we go and answer some questions and things like that. The whole purpose of today is to talk about how we can create and work with animations in After Effects, but taking them off the timeline a little bit. You'll see we're still kind of working on the timeline. We're going to take them off the timeline a little bit and use expressions to add this whole other dimension to our animation, whether it's repeating animations or being able to quickly copy and paste animations from one place to the next. Oliver from the UK, Susan from the UK, Sanjana from India, and Annika from Toronto. Please pardon my expression, Reverb Mike. I will, pardoned. All right, so here's what I want to take a look at first. When you have multiple objects like this, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and open up a new file here, and we'll take a look at this. Let me just get my After Effects window big. So I've got these little trees that were created in Adobe Illustrator, and we bring them over here into After Effects, and we're going to talk about just our first expression. This is probably the expression, if you've looked at animations and expressions in Adobe After Effects, you've probably seen the wiggle. And that's the first thing we're going to take a look at because it's easy, it's intuitive, and it's just kind of fun to play around with. And there's a lot you can do with it, whether you're animating artwork like this or even sort of simulating camera shake with a piece of footage that you've shot. The wiggle expression is very, very useful. So we can just work with any one of these trees. Maybe I'll take the layer here that is on top. And I want to wiggle the position of the trees. So we want to make it look like the trees are undulating and moving around a little bit. So I'll just select the layer here and I'll hit the letter P, and that's going to drop down my position property. From this point, we're going to hold down or use our Alt or Option key, and we're going to click on the little stopwatch. And that's going to open up our expression window here, or expression section. And also, you may have noticed our numbers, our X and Y in terms of the position, have converted from normal looking text to this red text. When you see the red text, it means that's a property that is being affected by your expressions. I'm just going to move my chat window here. I want to keep up with you guys. So we now can write an expression right here which will affect our X and Y position, the little red letters. And let's just start it off. We're going to write the word wiggle. And you can see After Effects has a little tooltip that's meant to help you. The more you write expressions, the more you're kind of just going to know what you use and what works in your particular workflow. So we're going to say wiggle and then open and close parenthesis. Now within the parenthesis, there are two things that go with wiggle. They're called frequency and amplitude. So sort of the number of times it's wiggling around every moment, and the amplitude, sort of the distance it's allowed to travel, the veracity of it, if you will. So let's do something rather shaky here and go 5 on the frequency and maybe 100 on the amplitude. And then with expressions, you want to close every line with a semicolon. It's just kind of like putting the period at the end of the line. Click away. And if there's no errors, it looks good, like this. And then we can just play our timeline. And we can see we have one dancing crazy tree, right? Over there on the right, he's going wild. Now that's a little bit, it's a little bit too jittery. So we reduce the jitteriness by reducing the frequency. So the frequency here is 5. Let's make this maybe 1. In fact, let's make it 1, and we're going to make the amplitude 200. So we're doubling the amplitude, but we're cutting the frequency down by 80%. Let's see what this looks like. Now we have this kind of nice, much more gentle, albeit bigger movement that is happening. Pretty cool. One of the great things about expressions is we've just created a totally sort of randomized, as random as computers get, randomized animation. But we can now apply this quickly and easily to all these other objects. We don't have to worry about keyframing. We don't have to worry about copying keyframes. You can just select your position property, and you can go Edit, Copy, Expression Only. Select that, and then select all the rest of our layers. So tree number 2 here, hold down Shift, select down to tree number 6, and then just Command or Control V, and we've just pasted that expression on all of our artwork. And now, when we play this, you're going to see, when we give it a moment here, we will see that it will begin wiggling everything all at once. Well, if After Effects doesn't crash, we will see that it'll wiggle everything all at once. While we're waiting for this, I will check. Reverb Mike, good to see you. Sean Cosell, Bit by Bit, I see you. Paloma, hey everybody. Annika, Susan again. Adding a slider control. We're going to talk about slider controls later. I'm not sure what's going on. After Effects may be crashing on me here. If it is, okay, I will go ahead and just close this and open it back up. Give me a second, folks. The beauty of doing things live. The beauty of doing things live. Here we go. I'm going to open this back up. And one of the things you're going to see is we can just recreate the animation very quickly as well in the event that After Effects does crash. But you'll see one line of code, and we can recreate the animation. Give me a moment here. We're just restarting After Effects. But yeah, one of the cool things about Wiggle and all of these type of expressions that we'll use is the fact that we can copy them and quickly move them all over to a bunch of different pieces of artwork. Let me reopen my file, and we'll be right back to what we're working on here. Okay, so I'm going to just jump back into my positioning. I'm going to bring up my expressions, and we'll once again just type wiggle. We're going to go 1. I'm going to maybe reduce that to 100 in terms of the amplitude, and then we'll just copy this. I'm going to copy it and just place it on one other piece of artwork here, just to hopefully make sure we don't crash After Effects again. And if I play it, you can see now we have 2 trees that are just moving and dancing and bouncing around. And it's very, very quick and easy. You can double tap the letter E, so just EE, and it's going to open up and show you. We can see we have that same exact expression here on the second tree layer that we have on our first tree layer. And you can see it's just an expression that is on that position property within your transform property as well there on that artwork layer. So pretty cool. That's the basic wiggle expression, the wiggle animation. Wiggle in one dimension, says Reverb Mike. Indeed, Mike, wiggle in one dimension. I'm going to go ahead and we will just save this document. I want to open up another document that I prepared here. And this one is creating this little boiling edges effect. So here, this is a really cool way to add dynamicness to virtually any project, any type of animation that you're working on already. Think of it like an overhead shot of maybe an egg you just cracked into a pan, and we want the edges to be all crackling and boiling. Well, to make an effect like that or animate that by hand is going to be not necessarily easy. I'll put it to you that way. So we have right here some artwork, and you can see there's a stroke on it. In fact, just for the sake of it, let's recreate it because it's a simple ellipse. Grab the ellipse tool, hold down Shift, drag out an ellipse. Let's do something that's moderately sized like that. And then down here in our contents, we can open up ellipse. We can go to the stroke. White stroke is fine, but I probably want the stroke width to be maybe like 30. Let's make it something that's easy to see here on the stream. And then for the fill, I don't want the color red. Let's go with kind of an egg yolky, maybe a yellowish orangey type color like that. So you can see pretty quick and simple. Then what we'll do is here on the shape layer, we're going to jump over to our effect controls panel. So if you don't have effect controls open, you would just go up here under window and you would find your effect controls right there. So effect controls, and over here, we're going to open up our effects and presets panel. Give it a second. Should load up and be all right. But here in Effects and Presets, we're going to look for an effect called Turbulent Displace. So Turbulent right there under Distort, Turbulent Displace. We're going to drag this over into our Effect Controls panel. And you can see what's already happened. It's doing quite an extreme bit of distortion to our object. We don't necessarily want this to distort everything. We want this to be something that really just attaches itself to the edges as much as possible. And the main way we're going to do this is by reducing the size of our turbulent displace down to, like, let's start with 2. And you can see we just have these little kind of crackled edges. If I zoom in there, you can see how we just have all of our edges are just nice and jagged now. And if I pan through my animation, well, this is what we're about to change, because if I pan through my animation, you see no change at all. You only see the distortion applied as if it's like a still image filter from Photoshop or something. You just get this nice crackly edge. But how do we make this edge sizzle a little bit? Well, we have a couple ways we can do it. First and foremost, there is this evolution option. When we change that, it's going to change the way that Turbulent Displace is created, and it will change and make the edge look like it's moved. But it's not going to continuously update. We're going to need some help to make this happen. The other way, and the way that we're going to work with this, is here under Evolution Options. We have the option to choose a random seed. So the seed, that's just kind of the starting point for the random number generation that is creating this crackled edge effect. And that's what we're going to be changing here with our expression. It's a very simple expression. It's a random number expression. Let's see what people are saying over here in chat. Annika says, ooh, from wiggle to sizzle. Clever, indeed, clever, much like your name. Takes different strokes to rule the world. Good to see everybody in the chat. So let's take a look at how to do this. We have all of these different features here in the effect controls. And if I look down here in my my layers panel, I want to add a random number here. So I can do that by digging around and looking for this exact effect and where it's applying itself to the shape layer. Or much like I can do down in my layers area, I can also Alt or Option click one of the stopwatches up here on Turbulent Displace and write expressions for any one of the parameters up here. So I can hold down Alt or Option and click on Random Seed, and you can see down here it's opened up all the way down here, the random seed part of that Turbulent Displace effect. So in here, I'm just going to do something simple. We're going to say, give me a random number. In fact, we're going to add our open and close parenthesis next to the word random. And inside these parentheses, we can set a range of where would you like the random number to be chosen from. So we're just going to put a high number like 5, 6, 7, 8,000. Let's just go 5,000. And then, of course, place our semicolon at the very end of the line. So what we're telling After Effects is, hey, go find a random number somewhere between 1 and 5,000 and make that the random seed number. But every single frame that After Effects plays, it's going to choose a new number. So what that's going to mean is every one of these frames, it's going to be like adding a new Turbulent Displace effect. So let's go ahead and save our document here, and let's try playing through this. You know what? I'm going to knock this down to half quality because I'm still a little paranoid that After Effects may crash on me again. All right, so here we are at 100%. Let's go ahead and play this. And you can see there's a very fast moving effect. Let's go ahead and make the size a little bit bigger in Turbulent Displace. Maybe we'll make it 5 just for the sake of the visuals here. And I go ahead and play through this. And you can see we have this very fast moving, boiling edge effect, right? As if, again, you've cracked an egg into the pan, you drop it down, and you see all those edges and the way they move and crackle around. And you can do all sorts of things. I mean, you can push this up to the point where it's distorting the fill as well. And because we're just affecting that random seed, it's going to create this effect as we see here, where we're getting this fast-moving, boiled edge type effect. Time is on our side, said Clever Mike. Indeed it is. Well, for now. Speaking of time, the next expression I would like to cover is the time expression. And some of what we can do with time here in After Effects. The first thing we'll do is we'll take this little piece of artwork and we will rotate it with time. So earlier when I first created the wiggle effect, remember I mentioned if that X and Y number are red, it means that they're numbers that are, what's a good way to put this? They're receiving data from the expression. So if the expression says the number 50, well, the X position will be 50, right? So we can take the time, like up here we have the time or timestamp, and as we move through, you can see we have all of these numbers, 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, 4 second, and so on. We can take that number and assign that number to a property of our artwork. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna rotate this artwork using the time that we're currently at. So if I hit the letter R, I select the artwork and hit the letter R, we have rotation. And right now the playhead is at 0, and also our rotation angle also conveniently at 0. So if we somehow hook this rotation to time, when time gets to 1 second, our rotation will go 1 degree. When it gets to 2 seconds, rotation will go 2 degrees, and so on and so forth. And there's more we can do with it. And I'll show you why this is kind of interesting. Let's go ahead and hit Alt or Option and click on the stopwatch to open up our expression area here. And we're just going to type out time and put a semicolon, right? And you can see it's that simple. We just type the word time, semicolon, cut it off, and what has happened? Well, our rotation, our degrees, or our angle, I should say, is converted to red. The 0x, that just has to do with the number of revolutions. That just has to do with, it's just the way it happens here in After Effects. But we're most concerned about the degrees that we're playing with here. So when I play through this now, we're going to see that our artwork is slowly moving. I mean, very slowly rotating. But you can see it is in fact rotating when I hover over it. It's rotated, just very, very slowly. And if I look over here, I can see that it has, in fact, now it's at 4.8 degrees, and we are at 4 seconds, just about to get to 5 seconds. So that should be 4.8 degrees. Very cool. But that's not, that's so slow. We can't really see what's going on. What happens if we say time times, right? So do an asterisk times 100. So now what we'll get is at 1 second, it'll actually be rotated 100 degrees instead of just 1. So let's see what this looks like. Now we can see we got some rotation here. We've got some upward momentum. But what if we want to take it a step further? What if, and After Effects, let me save this. What if we want to make this do 1 full rotation? Like, this is kind of an abstract shape. So if it's not fully rotated, nobody's ever going to notice. But what if you're animating like a box of donuts or something that's going to pop up and do a perfect flip and land, and you want that to happen over the course of your timeline? So here we have a 30-second timeline. I happen to know that it takes 360 degrees to make a full rotation. So what we can do is we can say time times a specific operator, for lack of a better term. So what we'll do here is we'll say time times, and then we need to do open and close parenthesis here because we've got order of operations things going on. We want to say 360 degrees divided by 30 because we have 30 seconds in our timeline. And what this is going to do is it will ensure that over the course of our 30 seconds, we will have a rotation that perfectly rotates and is 360 degrees rotated around by the time we get to the end of this 30 seconds. Maybe you don't want to do the full 30 seconds. Maybe you want it to be something you know will complete a full revolution in 5 seconds. All right, do 360 divided by 5. And then you can go back and go ahead and see that. And in 5 seconds, right there, we will have completed a full rotation. So it's pretty neat the way it works. I should probably be setting this to half quality so we don't run into issues. But that's time, and you can see all it's doing, it's outputting a number. It's saying, like right here, we're at 2 seconds. So 2 seconds times 360 divided by 5 is about 142. So that's the number that time is returning to the rotation angle input there in your artwork. What do we have over here? Sean says box of donuts. How does he know Jack is here? I didn't know Jack was here, but now I know Jack is here. Amp it up with multiplication, says Reverb Mike. Indeed, we just did. People laughing. My ears perk up when I heard donuts. Well, depending on where you are in the world, it's either dinner time or breakfast time. So donuts, donuts, donuts. What do we see here? Annika says, question, is Turbulent Displace possible for fonts? That's a good question. I'm not sure if it can be applied to live fonts or not. I've never tried that. But if you were to convert the font to an outline or to a shape layer, it would definitely be applicable there. Let's go ahead and try it. Why not try it? We're here. Let's grab our text tool and let me type out YouTube, since this is a question from YouTube, and we'll make it a little bit bigger. Oh, hello, let me undo that. And let's just use our proper type sizing tool there. And Times New Roman, whatever, not my favorite, but we'll go with it. Let's go ahead and apply this turbulent displace. Let's drop it down on the text like so, and there you have it. So yes, indeed, turbulent displace will work on live text. There we go. You saw it here first. All right, let's move along to the next project that I want to take a look at today. And this is going to be kind of exactly what we were just doing, but a little bit different. So we have this this time. Let me get rid of my wiggle here. I'm letting you know what I'm about to do. Let's adjust our time. Let's make it fast like we just had it. So time times 360 divided by 5 to get our rotation. But what if we want to make this sort of a pulsing, moving animation, right? Again, this is where these expressions are so wonderful, because we can begin kind of lumping them together and piling them one on top of another and building out these animations that are as beautiful as they are mathematically precise. So they're very editable, and you know you're going to like hit your spot every time. So we would use scale. If you don't have scale, you can just select your layer, hit the letter S. It's going to bring up the scale option like so. And we're going to apply a wiggle to our scale. And I want to show you what happens here because it's kind of funny, but also kind of scary. Let me change my quality setting. All right, I'm going to hit hold down Alt and select the stopwatch. And let's just add a wiggle effect here as we did before. Let's make it kind of crazy. Let's go 5 by 100 for the frequency and amplitude, semicolon at the end. And let's just play this and see what we get. So it's just After Effects is going kind of wild. It's feeding all kinds of numbers back into the X and Y of the scale, and it's a little crazy. So we need a way to sort of control this and tell After Effects, hey, take one wiggle number and apply it both to the X and to the Y, and therefore give us a uniform scale where it goes up and down, and it's not just, you know, appearing to bounce all over the place. So here's what we need to do. We need to use what's called a variable. A variable, you can think of it as a bucket. It's just a little container that you take, and you take a little piece of information and you put it in this bucket, and you can now take this bucket and you can use it all over your project. So if we take this wiggle, After Effects is going to execute one wiggle and store it in this variable. Well, one wiggle every frame. So let's go back and we're going to create a variable here. We'll call it our favorite wiggle. That's just the name of the variable. You can name it whatever you want. We're going to say our fav wiggle, and I'm using camel coding. First letter is lowercase, but then every other letter that begins a word will be uppercase. So our fav wiggle, and then we'll say equals this wiggle. And let's leave it at 510. We'll adjust the frequency and amplitude in just a second. So now what we need to do is we need to take the data or the number that's coming back to our fav wiggle, right? Our fav wiggle's our bucket. Wiggle is going to put a number in there. We want to take that number, whatever it's supposed to be for X and Y, and we want to apply it first to X and then to Y. Now in After Effects, and this is kind of getting a little code jargony if you're not familiar with computer science or code, just look at what I'm writing and ignore what I'm about to say. But these numbers are stored in what are called arrays, where you just have one number, another number, another number, another number. In this case, we just have two numbers in this array. It's the X and the Y position. 3D objects will have your X, your Y, your Z position. But here we just have our X and our Y. So arrays are stored in these square bracket things, right? That's how we write array, an array. So I just hit my square bracket. It's right there next to the letter P on your keyboard. And then we're going to type our function, or not our function, our variable name. So we'll say our fav wiggle. And by the way, I picked kind of a ridiculous name. Normally coding practices, it would just be like use the letter W or use the letter T or use the letter F, just because it's very quick and easy to reference these as we continue writing our code. So we'll say our favorite wiggle, and then we're going to add another set of square brackets and hit the number 0. All right. Then we're going to go outside of that square bracket and add a comma. So that is writing that our favorite wiggle number. If the number 32 comes back, that number is now going to be added to the X position. So we need to do the same thing now for the Y position. So every number that our wiggle generates, it will be written both to X and Y, and therefore our scale will be uniform. So again, we're going to type our fav wiggle, and then again, another set of square brackets and just another number 0. And we should be able to click away, and there are no errors. Let's check to see if in fact we have a uniform proper proportioned scale. And you can see a little wild. What we can do is come in here to wiggle and just change this. Again, reduce that frequency to 1, and maybe we'll set the amplitude to 250. So now we're just going to get a nice, beautiful kind of pulsing effect, just like that. And you can see it is all beautifully proportional, because After Effects is saying, hey, on every frame, this is what it's doing. It is first saying, After Effects, get me this number. Get me this random number from Wiggle, store it in this variable, in this bucket, and then down here, we're just saying, hey, whatever number's in that bucket, write it in the X spot. And in fact, you can see 142.2 in both the X and the Y. So it's a very, very effective way to move stuff around. And my camera went out for a second. It's a very effective way to move stuff around and play with values and numbers in After Effects. In fact, a lot of coding languages, virtually all of them that I know of at least, use variables in some capacity. It's a great way to move data and information around when you're writing stuff. Let's see what everybody's saying. Love how you explain it. Welcome back to Algebra Class, Reverb Mike. Please don't take me back. Thank you, Annika. Cool. Everybody's looking good, sounding good. So yeah, so this is just a simple way to create a proportional pulsing effect that is totally randomized, and we'll just go on until your timeline ends. Cool. Let's save this. Let's move into our next little project, and this is going to be looping animations. So this is kind of fun. I've got this little isometric piece of artwork from Adobe Illustrator, and there's a little car in there. Now, fair warning, if I really zoom in on this, these are just PNGs that I outputted, so the quality really kind of is not great. And also I'm looking at it at half quality. Maybe I can go back to full quality for this. But we've got this little car, and let's say we want to take our car and have him drive down the street and stop. But then there's things we can do with that. So let's take a look at it. Let me zoom in here. And we'll first take our car. Let's move him back up here maybe. Let's do a longer animation, right? So we'll put him here maybe at the starting line. And we're going to have him race all the way down the street to the other side of what we've got. So we've got blue truck. I'm going to hit the letter P because we want to animate the position. Now here we're going to do a normal timeline animation. I'm going to go ahead and click the stopwatch. No alt click, no option click, just click. It's going to drop a keyframe. We have that position locked in now. I'm going to go maybe to the 5-second mark on my timeline. We'll zoom out. And, well, I'm going to zoom right back in because I don't know what I'm thinking. We're going to move this truck all the way down over here. And look at this. Now we're dragging this line out behind us. That's just letting us know After Effects is saying, hey, this is the path the truck is following in this animation that you've just created, because we have in fact just created an animation. We've said, hey truck, back here, you're all the way over here at your starting position, but by the time we get to 5 seconds in the timeline, you're going to be down here. And we can see if we play through the timeline, our truck is in fact animated. So let me just set this to fit so we can see what's going on here. I'm going to go ahead and play this, and you can see there goes our truck. Voila, right down the timeline, and it's restarting just where it's trying to render. Maybe I will just set this to half quality. It should render quite a bit faster. And then you can see the truck just zips right down the road and comes to a screeching halt, and then it just stays there because we didn't animate anything else on the timeline. There's no other keyframes. Nothing else is going on. Let's say you're looking at this and you just, I don't know, there's all kinds of reasons why you want to repeat an animation. Repeating animations in multiple different ways is pretty simple to do with expressions. And actually, now that I'm looking at this, I want to go ahead and click this little back arrow all the way over here, the tiny little back arrow. It's going to drop us right on top of our last keyframe. I actually want to move the truck here. Let's just move him back to like the middle of the intersection here, right? Something like that. So we're just going to make him drive from one spot to the other. In fact, I'm going to grab that keyframe and I'm just going to move it back to about the 2.5-second mark, something like that. And we can see, voila, truck is going to drive right there and come to, again, a screeching halt. So what if we want this truck to do something else? Well, we have the ability to loop animations. There are a couple different ways to do this. The two most used ways, I believe, would be loop in and loop out. For myself, for the most part, I use loop out when I'm doing this kind of thing. Loop out is going to execute the loop after your final keyframe. So After Effects will play the animation and then the expression will keep it going. There may be times loop in basically plays the animation before your first keyframe. There are times when that's useful, but for the most part, I find myself using loop out a lot more than anything else. Let's go ahead and hold down our Alt or Option key and click on our stopwatch over here. Now we're playing with position here with expressions. So we're gonna fuss with the position values using expressions. That's the word I'm looking for. And what we'll do here is we're just gonna tell this to loop. So we're gonna say loop out. So you can see also camel coded, loop being lowercase l, out being that uppercase L, open and close parenthesis, semicolon. All right. And let's just play this and see what happens. So we're going to play through it. We're going to get to 2.5 seconds and boom, the animation just restarts. The timeline or the playhead is not going back to the beginning of the timeline. It has simply just kept playing down the timeline, but it just knows to repeat the animation. Now, if we go over here to our graph, we can turn on this, it's called like show post-expression animation. What is it? A post-expression graph. And you can see here, here's our animation that we made, the truck moving, boom, and it gets to a stop. And then all of the dashed lines, those are the animations that are created with expressions. So pretty cool. In fact, you can go back. We can keep that turned on. Let's get out of graph mode. I can select both of these keyframes and right click and do like, this is also the hotkeys F9, just apply like an easy ease to this. And we're going to have that easing now on all of our animations. So the car speeds up and then slows right down. In fact, I don't know why I'm so far away. Let's zoom in so you guys can get a better look at what's happening here because we're not going the full distance. And you can see there goes our car in all of its low quality 8-bit glory and just over and over and over again. Just nice, smooth, up to speed, come down to speed as though it's braking. But that's not it. One of the other things you can do with loop out, there's, I believe it's four different types of looping. I only really use 3. There is this initial default loop out, which I'm forgetting what it's called off the top of my head. But then there's one called ping pong. And if you can use your imagination for a second, well, you need to put this in double quotes. I'm sorry. Type ping pong, if I can spell it, in double quotes. And what this does is just like a ping pong table, it's going to take your animation and just play it front to back over and over and over again. So he gets to the stopping point and he backs up. And all of that easing is carried with the animation. So it's just a nice smooth back and forth, back and forth. The other one that I tend to use more frequently is called offset. So you can say offset, it should be 2 F's in offset. And what this does is it takes your animation, I'm going to zoom out a little bit for this. It takes your animation and it repeats it, but it doesn't take it back to the starting point to repeat it. So it's cool for something like the car because it would make the car drive and then drive and then drive further. So we would work our way down the street in this case. Let's play it and see what happens. So this is loop out offset. So he stops and then he drives more, right? We never animated all the way down here. And yet we have this animation that has been created using loop out and that offset effect within it. So that's all pretty cool. That is how you create some simple looping here in After Effects with expressions. Let's take a look at another cool thing you can do. We'll use our car example here as well. Let me open up a new file though. We're going to delay some animations using something called a value at time. It's maybe not the most intuitive sounding expression at first glance, but it works, and it does kind of make sense in terms of why it works the way it works. So here we're going to go ahead. I don't have an animation. We're going to animate our blue truck because it's the top layer. And let's zoom in here. And we'll just go ahead and animate. Maybe we'll animate this time the entire, him driving across the entire map in one fell swoop. So let's go ahead and hit the letter P. Brings up our position. Cool. Drop a keyframe where the truck will begin. Make sure we have our selection arrow. Grab that truck. Let's move him all the way down here, maybe just past the crosswalk as if that's some kind of finish line. We messed that up. We got to move out and place we'll just move our playhead over. After Effects will auto keyframe for us. We don't want to scale it up. This is part of the difficulty of working when you're zoomed out this far, I guess. There we go, something like that. Cool. So and let's go ahead and ease this right off the bat. So I'll just go ahead and ease that. Easy ease, just use the F9 key. And then go ahead and play through this and boom, we've got a truck that comes right up to speed, races, and is good to go. Well, what if we want to make it look like all these cars are racing? Well, of course, we could go in there and fuss around with it and make all of this stuff, animate it all by hand. But we can do this with expressions, and it's kind of fun. So what we want to do is we're going to open the position parameter for the white truck, because that's just the next layer down. And we're going to hold down Alt or Option and click on the stopwatch. And what we'll do is we're just going to say, hey, white truck, wherever this blue truck goes, wherever this blue truck that's already down here, we just want you to follow him exactly. So we can take this little thing here, the twirly doodad, the pick whip, and drag it up and connect it to the position of the blue truck. And you're going to see here, we've got some code that's been written as an expression. One of the other things that'll happen here, if I just ignore everything, is it appears that the white truck has disappeared. It hasn't disappeared. The white truck is currently hiding directly beneath the blue truck. So you can kind of see parts of the bumper and parts of the back sticking out, but they're both traveling exactly together because we said, hey, look, position of white truck, be the position of wherever the blue truck is. So that's what's happening there. Let me just zoom this out just a tiny bit here. But obviously there's a problem because we want to be able to see the white truck. Well, let's for a moment here just look at what is happening with this expression. Keep on trucking, says Reverb Mike. Yes, that truck is flying down the street. Indeed it is. Never a good thing when you see a big truck moving just a little bit too quickly on a residential street, is it? You just know something is not right. Anyway, here in the expression, we're saying, hey, this comp, so this composition, I want you to go to a layer, so dot layer. And then what's the layer? Well, right now our layer is blue truck. And if we look, the name of the layer is in fact blue truck. And then we want you to go ahead and set the transform, the position, to whatever it is there on the blue truck layer. So transform position, well, if we look here, the transform rests, or I'm sorry, position rests within transform here in After Effects. So again, when I go back to position, I can just double click E to open up. We can see that it's first targeting transform, and then it's saying, all right, I know position is down within transform. But we got a couple problems here. Like I said, this truck is traveling exactly with this truck. We want it to be delayed. We want this truck to be traveling right behind this truck. So how do we do that? Well, this is where we use this delayed value at time expression. So to the end of this, we're just going to type dot value at, again, this is camel coded. You can see After Effects knows, hey, you want value at time. Indeed, I do. So we're going to select that. And here within the parentheses, we're going to give it a time. So the number we want it to be is just time, let's say -1, something like that. Add a semicolon to the end, no errors, cool. And let's try playing this animation. So we play it, and then 1 second later, the white truck whoop, goes and takes off. So we could try something like maybe we want it to be -0.5 a second, so -0.5. Maybe we want the trucks to be just a little bit closer together, just like that. And then they take off, they chase one another right down the street. But we have a problem here. Well, it's not really a problem. It's just a way we can better optimize this. Of course, now we want to take this code and we would want to attach it to both of our other cars. The issue is we are referencing the blue truck layer, and our value at time is basing itself on the timing of blue truck layer. We want this to simply be able to say, whatever the layer is right above me in the layer stack, that's the layer I want you to copy the transform position for. So we do this by just saying index -1. And that's going to say, hey, white truck, go get the position of blue truck because it's right above you. But now we can select our position parameter here, and we can once again go edit, copy, expression only, and then go down to orange car and blue truck, select them both, and then just go edit paste, and we will now have 4 cars that all take off a ½ second apart. Bam, 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 just like that. And they all are working with one another because they're all referencing one another. If I zoom out, you can see there goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and they'll all get to the end and stop right at the same place. So value at time can be a very, very useful way to do little fun animations like this. But also if you think about transitions where maybe you have, circle, 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 circle that appear across the screen, or a bunch of diagonal lines or anything like that, where you have a repeating animation that you want the time to be a little bit staggered. Don't start right away. You can do that with value at time and then just input your number. And here we're choosing time -½ a second. So that is a fun way to do that. Math is rather slow, says Mike. Indeed, it is. But you get faster at it the more you do it, I suppose. But I don't know, it doesn't seem to be working with me because I still seem terrible and awfully slow at math. All right, taking a little bit of a right turn, which our car did not do. Let's take a look at just making a simple countdown timer with expressions, because this is kind of a complex animation if you were to try to animate this by hand. So what we have here is just a simple text field. So I just added some text. Use the text tool, add some text, choose whatever font you want. I added this weird bubbly font. It is what it is. How do we make this a countdown timer? Well, we need to first find where the letters are being made. And that is here. If we open up our text, we have our text, and then we have the source text. So the source text, if we edit the source text, we can change the text that is filled into the text field. So let's just Alt or Option click on this text, and we can change this, and we can make it say, let's just make it say Adobe Live or something like that. And well, that didn't work. So let's just, let's not do that. We'd have to add a string, and I'm not going to get into that. Never stray from the pre-prepared demo materials. All right, let's just focus on the timer. You can change the text in there. We're going to talk about manipulating strings of text or data, really, because we're working with numbers here in just a moment. We need to begin by creating a variable that's going to store the starting time of our timer. So let's call this variable starting. And we're going to say this equals 60, right? It equals 60 seconds. We want our timer to be a 60-second countdown, 60 seconds, obviously, to 0. And then we're going to create another variable called current time. And this is, again, a little out of my gourd, because normally I would just be like the letter C would be this variable, or T or something like that. But I'm trying to make it a little bit more understandable for everybody here that is watching us. So another variable called current time, and current time is going to equal starting, right? Our variable starting, which is just 60 seconds, minus whatever the current time is. So we're going to say minus time, because that's our current time, and then just a closed colon. So we can try and see what this does, and in fact we can see that, hey, we've got the number 60 that's now appeared. Okay, so if I play it, something weird is happening. Something weird actually isn't happening. It just looks weird. Because we're not rounding our numbers up or down, we are getting 57.7, 57.77777, all the way out to a certain set number of numbers, and so on and so forth. So your timer looks kind of crazy. It's all over the place. It's out of control, for lack of a better term. So how do we control this a little bit and just make it to a nice, pleasant, gentle, fun to look at 60, 59, 58 kind of effect? Well, it's not that difficult. And we'll go back over this in a second so I can really help you understand what we're writing here. We need to create yet another variable. We're going to call this output time. So this is the time that we actually want to output into our text field. So we're going to say, look, our output time is going to, we need to change this. We're going to do something called time to time code. We're not going to get into what this is. It's kind of a little tricky, but you would just write time to time code. What do we want to take and make time to time code? Well, we want to take our variable current time. So I can select that, just copy it, and we're going to paste it there inside of those parentheses. So current time is what time to time code is going to go and work on. And then whatever it does with that number, it's going to be stored in this variable we've called output time. Let's throw a semicolon on the end of that line. Let's go to our next line. And now we're going to say, hey, also output time, I want you to do something else. We're going to say output time is going to equal itself, output time, but we're going to use this little function here called substring. Again, kind of a more, I hesitate to say advanced, but just complex to explain in 5 minutes or less. Little substring, and we're going to pick the numbers that we want to show. So we're going to say 6 and 8. It has to do with the positioning of the numbers. So, but 6 and 8 is what you want in the case of something like this. And then we just want to type the variable output time, because ultimately this variable, whatever number is in that little bucket, output time, whatever number's in there, if it's a 60, if it's a perfectly round 59, if it's a 42, if it's a 27, we want that number, bing, to be displayed in our text field. Let's see if we made any mistakes or errors, and let's play this. And it should start any second. There we go, 58, 57, 56, 55. So what's happening is we're choosing a starting number of 60 seconds. We are saying, hey, look, that current time of 60 seconds needs to equal 60 minus whatever number we have on our timeline. So you can see here when we're at the 3-second mark, it's going to subtract 60 minus 3 is in fact 57. So for every second, it's going to just tick down 1 second as you would expect. And then time to code is going to take that and basically allow us to see it a little bit better. And then output time is going to just show us these two numbers, the 57. If I change this to like 7 and 8, you're going to see it's still going to display numbers, but like not the numbers we want. So we know that 6 and 8 is what we want. But there's something cool you can do with this. So let's say this is a project you're handing off to somebody that maybe is not the most savvy with expressions, or it's a countdown timer you're going to use a lot, and you don't want to have to think about your expressions after you've made your countdown timer. Well, check this out. We can go back to our effect controls, and we can use what's called a slider control. I'm actually going to delete this slider control because I'll show you how to get it. Over here in Effects and Presets, you can just type in Control, and you have a bunch of expression control effects. We want the slider control, and we're going to drag and drop it here in our Effect Controls panel. Now what we can do is we can say, hey, our starting number, instead of it being a number that we have to come into the expressions and like type the number out and do that kind of nonsense, delete that 60. And right here in this spot, you would take your pick whip, your expression pick whip, and connect it to whatever the number on that slider is. Now, right now, the slider number is 0. All right, you can just leave your expressions alone now. You can see, in fact, the number 0. But if I change the slider number to, I don't know, let's do 65. Well, we have 02 because we're converting it to time. Let's do something that's less than 60 seconds. Let's say 45. Well, there we're at 42 seconds. Why are we at 42 seconds? Because the playhead is currently at the 3-second mark, and 45 minus 3 is in fact 42. But if I go back to the beginning, we start at 45 seconds. So this is a way, and by the way, you can hit the little toggle down arrow, and you can just change the number, your starting number, just using the slider. So that's fun, but we did see kind of a problem. If we go above 60 seconds, something's going on here. Well, all we really need to change if we do this, we just need to change our substring from 6,8 to 4,8, and then we will get our full 1 minute, 2 minute, whatever we want it to be. If we want this to be 300 seconds, we now have a 5-minute timer, and you can play that, and you can see your timer just tick, 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 right down, just as you would expect it to be. Hello, everybody in the chat. Yes, math.floor as well, but we're using a little bit of a different technique than math.floor in this case. Math.floor, very, very powerful. A lot of those math features in terms of rounding numbers up and down and to the mean are all great. So now that we've introduced this idea of sliders, let's take a look at how we could use these sliders to tweak one of these wiggle animations, right? We're just keeping it simple today. I'm going to go ahead and open up another document, and we're going to control some wiggle here. We don't need to save our timer. Let me just pop this back to full screen. So here we have these 4 pieces of artwork. Let me make sure we don't have any expressions. We don't. And we want to make all of these shapes pulse. So let's just do it to one of them. So we'll go to, actually, no, we're not going to make them pulse because then we got to worry about scaling. Let's just go to position and let's just apply a wiggle here. So I'm going to hold down Alt or Option, and let's do a simple wiggle. So back to where we began. Let's go 3 by 300, and then just a semicolon at the end. And we can see, in fact, we have this, shape that's now gone and done its own thing. The other shapes are standing there like the good soldiers that they are. I'm going to cut down our quality just a little bit to prevent issues. All right, so we've got this one shape that's moving around. What if we want to make this shape, all of the shapes, wiggle just like that? Well, just like we've done a number of times, we can just select the position parameter, go Edit, Copy Expression Only, select all those layers, Command or Control V, and paste them all in place. And now all of our shapes are doing this, right? We don't want that, though, because before we copy this wiggle expression to other pieces of artwork, we want this to be something that anybody can change, that anybody can come into this After Effects file and change, whether you know expressions or not. And we're going to do this by using a null object that's going to store a couple sliders for us. So we're going to right-click, and we're going to choose New, and we're going to create New Null Object. It's just an empty object, a placeholder. It's this little thing here in the middle of the composition. We can drag it off to be out of the way so you don't accidentally select it or wonder what it is. It's just nothing. It's just a layer that holds information that we can reference with our other shapes. So I'm going to name this null object controller or something like that. It can be whatever you want. And then on this null object, we are going to place two, not one, but two slider controls. So slider control 1 and slider control 2. And what we can do here is we'll name the first slider. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to hit the enter key. We're going to name this one frequency. Frequency. I'm going to sort of half name them just because I'll know what I'm doing then. And then I'm going to name this one amply for amplitude. So we've got a frequency slider and an amplitude slider. And what we can do is come back into our position. So I'm going to hit the letter P on that number 4 piece of artwork. Then I'm going to Alt or Option and click to open up my expression. And we can see, well, let's write a wiggle expression for this. So we'll say wiggle. And now we can place our frequency and our amplitude. So I'm going to go back to this controller layer, and I'm going to drag the pick whip up here onto the frequency. What did I just do? I made a mistake there. Let's select there within our parentheses. I think I didn't have it selected. I'm going to grab my pick whip and drag it and drop it on the frequency slider. And you can see what it's saying is, look, for the first number, all of this code, all it's doing is going and getting some number. And the number that it's going to get is whatever number we set this slider to. Right? So you can think we could set this to 1 and then our frequency would be 1, like a nice, beautiful, generally a nice, smooth wiggle animation. And it's just saying, look, within this composition, ignore the error for a second. Within this composition, go to the layer. What's the name of the layer? It's our controller layer. It's our null object. And you're going to look for an effect, right? Down within here are effects. If we go into here, we have effects. Down within the effects, there's something called frequency. And by the way, it's a slider. We want you to return that number to us. Cool. So once we've done that, let's add a comma to the end. And we're going to use the pick whip now for the amplitude, and we're going to connect this to the amplitude slider. And then we need to put our closing parenthesis and a semicolon. And you can see, thankfully, our error message goes away. Now let's see what happens if I play this animation. Well, nothing happens. Why does nothing happen? Well, remember, we're just taking the numbers off of those sliders. And right now, those numbers are 0. So let's change this. Let's make the frequency 5 and the amplitude, I don't know, 25. Let's make it like a really fast shake. Right? Now when we play it, we can see we've got just a really fast little shake. Cool. Before I do anything else now, we can copy this expression to all the rest of our artwork. So go ahead and select position, go edit, copy expression only. We can just select our bottom 3 layers, however you want to select your layers. Command or Control V, paste that in. And now all of our shapes are going to just shake like they're afraid, like something's coming for them, like the infographic gods are coming down and getting ready to delete them or send them to the export assets bin or something scary like that. But once we've done this, making changes to our animations wholesale is as easy as just selecting our controller layer, that null object, and adjusting the frequency and amplitude. So we could say, all right, we want this to be like big, slow movements. So let's set this to like 250 and set the slider to just 1 instead. And now let's see what we've got. You can see that we just have these big bodies that are moving around and bouncing off one another or bouncing off the edges of the document, just like so. So that's kind of a fun way to go ahead and connect sliders to expressions that you're using. Yeah, that's and give me any questions you got in the chat. Anything you guys see that that you find interesting. Yeah, this is how we go ahead and connect controllers. Very often, by the way, if you download from Adobe Stock or any of the different places where you can go and buy somebody else's After Effects file to work on your own motion graphics, you're going to see this type of setup where there's a controller layer and you go in there and you change colors or you change sizing or sometimes animation and things like that. A lot of different things you can do. Hello, Kevin. How are you? How's everybody doing? Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, bounce any questions off me in the chat. I'm trying to see if there's anything else I can throw in here. Maybe what we could do is just until we run out of time here, we could have a little bit of fun, create a new composition. Okay. All right. So, well, we are running out of time now. So that is going to be it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for being here. following along, learning a little bit about expressions in After Effects, creating some different animations with those expressions. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time.